episode of the Restoration Today podcast is brought to you by Restoration Brokers of America. Did you know that 80% of businesses are unsellable? Let RBA work with you to ensure you maximize the value of your business when you decide it's time for a change. You've worked hard to build it, let RBA work hard to sell it. Visit sellmyrestorationbusiness.com for more information.
Hello there. Thanks for checking out this episode of the Restoration Today podcast. Today, we are talking about the number one trend in the restoration industry. And I'm guessing that everyone who hears me say that knows exactly what we are talking about. We are talking about hiring and recruiting. It is so incredibly difficult right now. We are publishing our State of the Industry study in the next issue of the magazine, the November-December issue. And this is hands down number one pain point for restorers across the board and in a lot of other industries as well. So I'm excited today to be joined by Gregg Taylor, who is with Xactly byGTE, and they specialize in recruiting in the restoration industry. So Gregg, thank you very much for joining me. You and I had the chance to meet at RIA earlier this year for the first time, and you guys have really been expanding your reach in the restoration industry over the last year in a big, big way. So go ahead and kind of introduce yourself and share a little bit about your background kind of in business and recruiting both.
Sounds good, Michelle. It's good to see you again, and we're big fans of you and your magazine. So this is fun to take part. So I got my start in business years ago working in funeral service. Believe it or not, I worked for a company that insured funerals for families, and our clients were small mom and pop funeral homes. There's 20,000 of them across the country. I later got promoted and became an executive at the nation's largest casket manufacturer, also in the funeral business.
Okay.
So for years, my clients were just regular people who knew their craft exceptionally well in a business that nobody cares about until you need it. And so it's interesting all these years later, right? Being involved in the restoration industry, which is pretty much the same, I say, where it's a bunch of guys out there. They know what they're doing at their craft. Nobody wants to ever have to need them, but they're so thankful when they're there. After I left funeral service, it's only because we became a consultant. We bought some funeral homes. We ended up selling those and kept the consultancy, and I had the opportunity to do some work with Paul Davis and 23 offices in Florida. And we did a lot of things well with Paul Davis. We weren't really great in recruiting. And I saw that as a challenge. In fact, I met you when I went to the RIA a couple of years ago for the first time to see if they could help us. And we realized that it wasn't a Paul Davis issue. It's really an industry-wide issue. I thought we could put a company together to address it out there in the industry. And that kind of brings us today. We're definitely out there, and it's definitely a tough industry, but we hope we're making a difference.
Yes, for sure. Okay. So what do you find your clients are like? Is there a specific position that you're finding is the hardest for your clients to fill right now?
Yeah, the position that is the hardest to fill is mitigation techs, believe it or not. It's the boots on the ground, and it's not a position that we recruit for. We have stayed away from it. You have a lot of folks that left the industry when COVID came and don't want to come back. You've got a lot of folks that just find other things to do. Certainly, as pay has increased and you can make $15 an hour at Walmart or Dunkin' Donuts, a lot of those folks are gone. So Michelle, actually, I wasn't prepared to talk to you about this today, but it's coming out. We actually formed a new company called Labor byGTE, specifically to speak to the mitigation tech and the carpenter industry. The business model for me to operate that had to be different. I couldn't do it under Xactly. There's going to be some failures. There's going to be some folks that don't show up for interviews, but we're going to grind away at it because I don't like my clients to say please. And they've been saying, Gregg, please get involved. Please help us with mid-techs. And we keep saying, no. Well, we think we can do it out there because, Michelle, that's the biggest issue.
So how do you coach restoration companies toward being open to the right candidates. Like, I think a lot of times restoration companies, because we're such a fast-paced business, they're like, I need a MIT tech, which means I need somebody that maybe knows Mika, Moisture Map, or Dash, whatever that may be, or knows how to use a moisture meter or whatever. And that's rare. Like, you're really just not going to find that, but you can train someone up into that position faster, right?
Yeah.
Then
Yes.
sometimes you can find the person with those exact skill sets. So how do you coach your clients into being more accepting of people that are outside the industry and training them into those roles?
That's a great point, and it's a big part of what we have to do.
Yeah.
Most of our folks that are in this industry have access to training.
Mm-hmm.
And so it exists, right? That you've got the universities at Paul Davis University, and Belfour has their training, right? SurfPro's got their training. And for the independents or the smaller guys, the RIA has got, amazing training resources. So the resources are there. I think that it's forgotten. I think because, as you mentioned, the pace is so fast that I'd rather get a guy, and here's how we're going to train him. We're going to come in, he's going to sit at a computer, get his paperwork done, and I'm going to send him out with Billy Bob out in the field. Mm-hmm. That's a challenge. But Billy Bob may be a great tech, but he's not a trainer. And so that kind of is a self-defeating method of doing it. So we're trying to coach. You may not find that gold-plated A player out there, but you may find somebody that's hungry, that wants to grow. Maybe, I look at the industry and say, you can come in here without a college degree. You can start as a tech. You can be an estimator in 2-3 years, project manager. You can make 6 figures in 4 or 5 years. You got no student loans. I believe that boots on the ground, being trained and coached up, that's the future of the industry. I hope more of our customers think about that.
Yes, for sure. All right. So looking at also the way that the state of hiring is, what are your beliefs on the old adage of hire slow, fire fast?
Yeah, that's, things have changed.
Yeah.
Right. So I think if I always say internally that everything can be teachable, behavior can be trained. Mm-hmm. You have to have 3 qualities that you never go against, and that's being legal, moral, and ethical, right? You do those things, then you can stay and we can coach you up. I think, Michelle, to that point, it starts in the hiring process itself. Mm-hmm. And frankly, there are a lot of owners who come to us and say, I need this person, I need them quickly. We find them the person, they take 2 weeks to get back to us. The person's barely interested anymore. We're having to coach the person to say, hey, don't worry, they're really interested. We're fighting with our own client for a need they told us that they have. And so sometimes that candidate takes that job, but they are no longer an A player. They already start saying, this company is not going to treat me well. They haven't even hired me yet, and they're missing calls. They're not talking to me. There's a big mistreatment, I think, of recruiting agencies themselves, as well as the candidates. And it hurts the industry worse than it hurts us, right? Because I can find more candidates, and my career I'm getting near the end. but they're missing out on talent that sometimes says, I'm never going to accept a job with this company again because of the way I was treated. And that's sad. That needs to start right at the beginning, making sure there's value created in the individual and in the process.
So what do you coach your clients toward as far as a healthy hiring process? Like, how many interviews should there be? How quick should they be responding to the recruiter, those kinds of things?
Great question. So on the labor side, as we kick off Labor by GTE, we're going to suggest that it's a one interview and make your choice. Folks are making, they're making choices. Walmart is saying, hey, you know what? We're going to do one interview and we're going to hire. Like, we need the people now. We can get you trained. We can get you in the system, but the long drawn out process is difficult. Where we have our biggest need, as you mentioned, and as we talked about for mid-techs, honestly, there's not a lot to interview about. The resume is pretty much what the resume is. And that's what you want in a mid-tech, somebody that's just getting started on the way up, right? So we think one interview. As it relates to the other positions, I think that you can do up till you get to leadership. Leadership, I think it's going to have to be probably a 3 interview process, but But the project managers and the estimators and the rest of the production team, sales reps, those folks should be able to knock it out in two. Understand that players have jobs. So, to say, yes, I want to interview this person and I'm open tomorrow morning at 8:30 is probably not going to work.
No.
Because that person has a job, right?
Yes.
So taking advantage of mediums like this, where you can do a virtual call after hours, you can do it on a Saturday. People are perfectly fine with that. I think we've got to take advantage of those opportunities, but probably 2 interviews for those, 3 for your leadership people.
Sure. So what does the posting okay. I have so many questions. I'm not even sure where to start with this. Okay. What in your mind, job descriptions aren't just straight up job descriptions anymore. If you're posting just a generic, like, hey, we're looking for a MIT tech on a website, that's probably not going to get you anywhere, right? So what does a fruitful, good, attractive job description look like?
That's a great question. We were pretty lousy at it when we first started. I'll be honest with you, right? It was like, we got the job description, let's put it out there, let's go. Sometimes it would just take the company's job description and replicate it and put it out there. We found that they're ineffective. I think you have to speak to a need in the job description. So we like to talk to the lower end of the pay scale. We like to talk to them about there's no layoffs with this company. Like, our clients are long-term and they're committed. They're financially successful. When business slows down, they're going to find you other things to do. But I think that's a big issue. Layoffs, full-time work is an issue, right? So we try to speak to the things that would make you shy away from the business and let you know what's there. We try to speak to training, and we try to speak to upward mobility inside of those job posts so that it looks different, it feels different, and we're finding a personal need, not just the raw description of a job and the pay. Let's kind of make sure that this is something that they feel, not just see. That's what we go after.
So what would you tell a company that, all right, I've got my job description, I'm not working with a recruiter right now, I want to try to hire myself, I'm going to go post this on Indeed. Is that good enough? Can I just post it on Indeed and run away?
Yeah, it used to be pretty cool, right? Where you could just post it on Indeed, but no more, right? No more. So here's the thing about Indeed. I think everybody posts on Indeed.
Yeah.
So let's start with that fact right there. So if you're in a city and you've got 25 competitors and you're looking for an estimator, all 25 of you are looking for the 2 or 3 A players that might be available, and you're all using the same source. You're all using Indeed. It's not going to get it done. So you've got to find other job boards. I think you need to connect locally. I'm a big fan of getting to your local high schools. There are some folks in there, Michelle, that are a perfect fit for the restoration business. I mean, I give you some examples. I've got my oldest son is a lawyer. My youngest son is a doctor. My middle son is like me. Like, we didn't like school. And so, the idea that you can get started in a career that is very productive, that you can end up in ownership, our industry has that, if only they would talk about it. So I think getting to those counselors and letting those counselors know what our industry is and what you can do, I think that's a critical point. I also think we mentioned this before, but you got to coach your own people up. Yeah. You've got to develop people from within. And if you do that, you're setting yourself up, I think, for long-term success. But the idea of throwing a post out there on Indeed, it's going to get swallowed up by everybody else's posts.
What are you seeing some of your clients or other restoration companies doing that is working to attract the right people? In addition to maybe working with a recruiter, what are they doing right to get the right candidates in the door and keep them?
It's a great question, right? So whether it's a recruiter or not, I think it starts with what's your process of working with that people, with those people, and how do you manage their time effectively, not yours. So I think that it all starts with that. What's our internal process, whether the candidate comes from a recruiter or any place else? Yep. I think word of mouth. Believe it or not, 61% of the people that are in the restoration industry are there for word of mouth. My stepson is working for Paul Davis here in Las Vegas. This dude is fantastic with his hands. Like, when my wife needs something done, the last person she's going to ask is me, I can't get it done, right? But David knows how to do it. It was a phone call, right? It was a phone call.
Yeah.
Guys, I need mid-techs, and now he's in that industry. So word of mouth is critical. That only happens profitably and positively if the people you have in your organization have a positive feeling about the organization. If they're being treated well, they feel good telling somebody else, hey, there's an opportunity here that you may want to consider.
Okay. So, all right, you just threw out that great stat of 61% is word of mouth. What other stats you got over there for us? Do you have any other stats? That was a great stat you just threw out there. Stats.
That's funny. So obviously, we take a look at the cycle times, right? From the time I need a I need a position to the time it gets closed. For us, that's important. For me, I have to look at what are our costs in between point A and point B, right?
Mm-hmm.
Michelle, about 10 years ago, there was a lot of talk about the cost of a bad hire. Remember that? Like that was the big news out there. The bad hire is going to cost you X.
Yep.
Here's what we're trying to preach right now. And that is the cost of a non-hire. So if you've got a job that opens January 1st and you need an estimator and you've looked for 3 months and now you hire a recruiter, and instead of being serious about the first 4 candidates that we send you that are all A players, you wait another 2 months. So you've got 6 months that you've needed this estimator. If this estimator you expect to create $1 million in revenue and you've lost 6 months of that, how much did you give away by not making that choice?
Mm-hmm.
You've got to look at the business the backwards way. And certainly on production right now, we have folks that are, not taking the time to make a hire, only talking about it, and production slows down, revenues don't slow down. So I think the industry needs to look at the cost of a non-hire. It will stun you. It will shock you when you see how much you're giving away by not pulling the trigger.
Yes, I totally agree with that. Okay. So maybe what you just said is going to be your answer to this question, but as a recruiter, what is the number one thing you want restoration companies to understand when it comes to what it takes to find talent for the restoration industry?
Speed. The good ones don't wait.
No.
And in this industry right now, if you're unemployed, you're probably not very good, right?
Yep.
Because there's all sorts of opportunity, but that opportunity is what gets candidates excited,
mm-hmm.
and they're getting a lot of choices. So to me, speed is the most important thing. Yep. I also think listening. Some people interview and they tell you everything about the company, but they don't hear why it would be interesting to that individual that they're talking to. Mm-hmm. So I think what an interview should start with is especially if they've already been in the industry, right? Tell me what's worked for you, Michelle, in this industry. What do you love about it? And tell me what's not working for you. And maybe my answers, right, are the things that you're missing.
Yeah. And
you feel that need. And so I think taking the time to understand who your candidate is critical. I also think that, like a lot of industries, and for folks that get, up in years, like I am, that have been around for a long time, you sometimes think that what you used to do still works.
Like indeed.
And it's oftentimes changed, right? I know when I get a new iPhone, I can't figure it out, but I give it to my daughter and she knows it in a second without reading the manual, right? So what are you doing with social media? What are you doing with your Facebook? What are you doing with your Instagram? What are you doing with your Twitter? If you ask me personally, like I don't have any of those, I think, other than Facebook. And I have family members call me to say, please look at your Facebook, right? So I'm that guy that I'm just talking about. So you need people who understand what's happening today. Yeah. Not the way that it used to be. I think that's going to also help folks get themselves in front of the right type of talent as fast as they possibly can.
So what are you finding these passive candidates are wanting in a new job? I think a lot of owners also get caught up in it's all about the pay. I don't think it's all about the pay. What are these best candidates who are like not on the job hunt? They're passive. What are they wanting in a new company?
Yeah, so I know you had Leighton Healy on recently, and Leighton and I had a meeting when his book came out because it was very interesting to me, and I really wanted to delve into it. Great numbers. I mean, it's a great study that he did for the industry. Some things really were a shocker. For example, millennials, the last thing they care about is money. Like, it's not the most important thing to them. So on our intakes, Michelle, Kim Silbar, who is our executive VP, she asks questions like, "What are the charities that you support?" Right? Is it homeless? Is it breast cancer? What are those charities? Because millennials care about that, right? Where are you at in the environment? Like, that's important to young people, to make sure that we're using as least paper as we possibly can. And if we have a chance to use electric cars, like, that's critical to them. We get it to your baby boomers, right? They're at the end of their careers now. And so they're looking for pay, but it is without question not always pay. In fact, I'm going to tell you, most of the time, it's not about pay. It's about opportunity. It's about culture. And it's about fit. That's what they're looking for.
Where do you see all of this going? I know we're in a little bit of a unsure economy, maybe not quite in a recession, but it's a little iffy right now. We don't really know where we're going. So where do you anticipate trends are going in 2023 when it comes to hiring in the labor market and shortage of workers, all that? Where do you think we're going?
Yeah, we've been trying to get ready for that on our side. I mean, I spent a lot of time looking at the economic reports and what they're going to mean if things change. And I think we've got to be prepared. Some folks say it's not going to be so bad. I believe in preparing for the worst case scenario. So this industry will continue to produce. It doesn't matter if a flood comes in and it knocks my house over. Unfortunately, I can't wait till I get a better job in order to get it fixed, right? Like, I'm going to use my insurance and take advantage of that. So I think the industry itself will still be there. I think some of the things that restoration companies are called out to do now, those are going to go away if I got to pay out of pocket and the recession is hitting, right? So I think it's how you position your business. I think that commercial business is probably where everybody needs to keep their eye on if we're going to go into a recession. Look at your balance there. So from a staffing standpoint, here's where you can get killed. The bigger people are going to grab the better players that come available. And so you need to make sure that right now you're locking in your people, right? You're keeping that A player happy. You're making those hires that are not going to be available here in a few more months, and having the right organization. An organization is no greater nor no less than the accumulation of the people who make up that organization. So you need the good ones. You better get them while the getting is good, is what I would say.
Yes. Okay. Tell me, I want to talk a little bit more about your company specifically, and you don't have to give away any trade secrets, but I know every restoration company works differently. And those who know me know that I was a recruiter for a little bit. Every company's process is a little different. And I think that matters. That also changes who's a good fit for who. Anyway, I'm curious what your process looks like when you find candidates. Like, are you doing screenings? Are you doing background checks? What does that look like? How are you helping restoration companies through this entire hiring process and more being a partner to them instead of just pushing candidates their way?
That's great. So we don't believe in just firing resumes out there to you. A conversation has to be had. We do a screening without question on our end. Because so many of our clients are connected to insurance companies, they have to do their own background checks anyway, so ours wouldn't matter. So I believe in the screening piece, but long before that, it starts with us understanding the job completely. And Michelle, you were in this industry as a recruiter, so I was going to say you'd be surprised, but you can remember, I'm sure, how often a client does not have a full grasp of the position they're trying to hire for.
Yes.
Right? They'll send you a job description and you need to be in construction. We need you to be a project manager. Oh yeah, and the job has nothing to do with construction. And it's like, so we try to even help them at times rewrite their job description once we can help them get clarity on the position.
Yeah.
The other thing is we all love that unicorn, right? That can use the right hand to do an estimate, while on the left hand they're putting carpet down, and with their left foot they're driving down the street, right? But that doesn't exist. And so you're asking for too much. So I think we try to get them to really be focused. And sometimes it's more about, tell me about your business and how this fits. Michelle, I'll tell you this too. I'm glad I don't have shareholders because they wouldn't like this part. I'm okay walking away from an opportunity.
Yes.
Right. So I have one guy, this guy called me up, Greg, I need 2 project managers. He described the situation to me. He wanted to take 2 successful project managers, make them manage the new project managers. I asked them what experience the current project managers have in managing people, not jobs, but people. None. And I said, my friend, here's what's going to happen. You're going to promote them. The A players that we send you are going to not be taught. They're going to leave. Your other guys are going to have this pressure from you, and they're going to leave. You're going to end up with nothing. So we're not right. I have another client that I said, financially, listening to where you're at, I don't think you need us. But here's what I would do. And Michelle, 4 months later, they called me and they're like, Greg, we're ready. And they were. Yeah. So we are not afraid to say no. We're going to be here for a long time, but coaching and counseling, I think is critical for us to be successful and to be a great partner.
Recruiting is too hard to take on jobs that you think aren't going to get filled or whatever. I remember toward the end of my recruiting, you're talking about job descriptions and stuff like that. And I had started really coaching clients toward, hey, I know you're looking for an estimator. Maybe let's back off on wanting Xactly specifically and start asking questions like, how tech savvy are you? Talk to me about other software platforms you use. How good are you with Excel? Like, how, those kinds of questions. Because if you find somebody who's tech savvy and has used other software, you can train on Xactly.
Correct.
So restorers quit getting pigeonholed on Xactly.
That's right. That's exactly right. That's a great message to have. It almost goes back to your first question, where we said training is important. There are classes. Listen, I'm IICRC certified. Now, nobody would hire me, but I passed the class, right? So if I can pass it, anybody can pass it, especially those people that really know what they're doing. So at the end of the day, let's teach our people, let's develop people, let's grow our people. I think that's the very best thing that organizations can do.
That is kind of an interesting note, though. I mean, there are a lot of business owners, kind of operations people that have maybe their WRT or whatever that is. You could throw that sucker on a resume and it would show up so fast on some of these job platforms and people would be like, I'll hire you without talking to you.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Sight unseen. Come on. Right. Yeah. And you're going to be shocked. Exactly. No doubt.
All right. So before we wrap it up, you don't have to, again, like reveal any clients or anything, but I love a little bit of like recruiting horror stories. Like, don't do this. Like, don't be on a treadmill while you're doing a phone interview as the owner with one of your candidates, please. But I mean, we've also been on the other side where people have shown up drunk. People have shown up in filthy clothing. People have, whatever. So I'd love a few of your horror stories.
The biggest one is when you have a client that forgets the interview. Here was one. It's happened up in the Northeast. It's as much as I'm going to give away about location.
Fair. Yep.
We had a candidate, I'll never forget, the candidate was a estimator, had a 3:00 Eastern time appointment on site. Shows up, the administrative assistant goes to the GM and says, hey, the candidate's here. The GM asks the candidate to come back. What are you here for? And the candidate tells them that, we had this set up and I got the email and you were copied on it. I saw it on the email to confirm the meeting. No, I wasn't copied on it. No, I don't have it. The person pulled their phone out and said, here. The general manager was so mad about that he cursed the person out and told them to leave. That was the horror story of horror stories. Like you got, and then had the unmitigated goal to reach back out to us a couple of months later saying, I could really use an estimator.
No.
Yeah. Thank you for coming, but no, we'll pass. So yeah. Let's hope we don't find anything worse than that. But yeah,
Wow.
not good. Yeah,
A
not
lot of the
good.
recruiting side, I'm just going to let everybody know who's listening. A lot of the recruiting of what recruiting is also coaching you, the restoration company,
Yep.
on how to go through this process and
Correct.
how to make this successful for you. I'm just going to lay that out there.
Thank
So
you, Michelle. Thank you.
thank
Better from you than me.
it's true. I told Greg off camera before we started that you could not pay me to recruit in this industry again. It is so hard. So anybody who does it, bravo to you. Thank you for
Yes.
your work. It is totally needed and necessary. And gosh, it can be a thankless, really hard, really frustrating job.
There is no question. And we try to tell our team, they love what they're doing.
Yeah.
They're passionate about it. It's not the ones we don't get. We're graded on the ones we do get.
And that
So-
feels
so-
so good. That feels
Correct.
everything, and it makes it worth it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that's how we, I think, stay whole on those days when we're just getting battered.
Yes, there are the big, bright, amazing hires that you get where
That's
you
right.
find this like the unicorn or the diamond in the rough or whatever. And it's like,
Those are-
oh my gosh, where have you
those
been
are-
all my life?
Those are great days. Exactly.
My
Those are
favorite
great.
person who's ever lived.
Undoubtedly.
Yes. All right. Well, Greg, thank you so much for your time. Is there anything else that you want to add before we wrap it up? And let us know where people can find you.
Perfect. I think we've covered it all. I would say when you're looking at a cost of a non-hire, understand that we have fees, right? And don't get scared off by those fees, because the fees are not so high that the person you're hiring is not going to make up for them in a very quick period of time.
Yep.
So don't delay and don't be afraid of those. I would say that's one. Two, value your relationship with any recruiter and value the candidate. They're important people. They have families to feed. They don't need to be left out in the cold for a month while you're trying to make a decision. That, I think, is important. You can reach us at toll-free 888-237-9797. Website www.xactly.com, and that's exactly without the E at the beginning. Other than that, let's all do what we do best, and that's take care of people and restore their lives.
That's right. Well, thank you, Greg, very much for your time. I look forward to seeing you at shows in 2023.
Thank you, Michelle. I'll see you on the road.
For more Restoration Today and the latest news, visit our website, cnrmagazine.com, and find the latest episodes of the Restoration Today podcast on your favorite podcasting platform.